Let's now turn to the next big test for the markets, however. That's NVIDIA earnings. They're coming up Wednesday after the bell. Bryn, coming to you. You own NVIDIA.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's any surprise. It would be surprising if their numbers weren't great. I mean, you know, Jensen is a showman, but he's got the goods to back it up. I think they're going to have huge numbers. I mean, I've been saying this all along. If you listen to any of their earnings calls from the hyperscalers, what are they doing? They're increasing CapEx. They're continuing to spend. And we also heard from AMD. They had great numbers. And Lisa Su, I think, will confirm what Jensen Huang will say about the continued trajectory and the spend, whether it's from the VCs or the hyperscalers. I would not be surprised if they have a massive beat and guide higher. It would be, to me, shocking if they didn't.
All right, totally shocking. Josh, we were actually just here talking about this yesterday. You pointed out the incredible estimates when it comes to revenue, 112% year-over-year growth, EPS 125%. I was speaking to Dan Ives on my show, Worldwide Exchange, earlier today. He says NVIDIA not only has to meet those expectations, has to beat them and even raise guidance. Do you agree?
Yes, and I pointed out we're looking for 100% plus growth for revenue and 130 some odd percent growth for earnings. And it's not out of the question that they have an unbelievable quarter, but it's not 137, it's 132. And the market decides to whack 10% off of this stock. It's a high beta name, and it does have a lot of sensitivity in the short term. But the good news is NVIDIA has reported now 6 straight quarters of sales and earnings per share beats, and they've raised guidance each time. So that's why the estimates are as lofty as they are. But this is a company that markets have been repeatedly waiting to make a misstep. If you've been betting against it after each of the last 6 quarters, you've been covering higher. It has not been fun. So look, that's what you're up against with this name. Stock is coming into next week about 9% off its highs. At its low during the recent volatility, it was down as much as 27%. That probably would have been a better time to start a new position than today, especially ahead of earnings. I don't know that that's something that I would want to do, but the stakes are high, I think, for the overall market. The last thing on this, if you listen to the conference calls, Microsoft, Meta, these are the biggest customers, and really what they say matters the most. The hyperscalers, none of them are pulling back on spending. Not one of them. And actually, Zuckerberg raised the bar. I think he's going to spend like another $40 billion or something. So that's good news if you're along in the name. Their top customers are not talking about anything other than full speed ahead, at least for now.
You know, Josh, to your point again, going back to that Dan Ives note, he came out with the note earlier, actually yesterday, called it the most important tech earnings in years. He went on to say that for every dollar spent on an NVIDIA GPU chip, there are $8 to $10 in multiplier across the tech sector, which speaks to our firmly bullish view of tech stocks over the next year, just kind of speaking to how important these earnings are for NVIDIA. Kevin, I want to bring you into this conversation. You are now a holder of NVIDIA through the QDVO ETF, newly launched here at the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah, Frank, we're super excited. We launched QDVO yesterday here at the NYSE. It completes our suite of ETFs with our partner Amplify. It's a higher octane, think of the Qs, the Russell 1000 growth, but writing covered calls against it. We've managed this as an SMA for 5 years. It's now available here at the New York Stock Exchange. And we had iDevo 2 years ago, an international version, and all of these spin off of Devo, our flagship, our dividend growth portfolio. We're very, very excited. Thank you. All
right, now as an NVIDIA holder, we have to ask you, what do you make of these earnings coming up? The bar is just really sky high. The impact to the rest of the tech sector could be immense. Also want to bring up something we talked about yesterday. Our CNBC data team, they crunched the numbers. The implied volatility after earnings, 10% either up or down.
Yeah, so we're not writing a covered call against it because that vol could go one of two ways. However, this is a stock that's got the ability to continue to grow. The growth for the next 5 years are 30% projections. If it just comes anywhere close to that, we're going to see the stock move higher. And full disclosure, even though the ETF was launched yesterday, we've had this for 5 years. So I'm not coming into NVIDIA and jinxing it for everyone.
By the way, NVIDIA rebounding today. You can see right here, shares up just over 3%.
Joining us now for more on NVIDIA is Patrick Moorhead, founder and CEO of More Insights and Strategy. And, Patrick, look, a couple weeks ago, like maybe expectations would be beaten down. The stock was, off 20%. We've had this huge rally back toward the highs since then. What do you think the embedded expectations are for NVIDIA right here?
I think expectations at a minimum are they're going to meet expectations. But I see that, this train that can't be stopped, I think they're going to do better than anybody can expect it. Because there's a lot of things people don't understand about NVIDIA, right? This is less about just fulfilling demand. And don't get me wrong, the demand from the hyperscalers are huge, but there are new types of opportunities that people don't fully realize. And that, first of all, NVIDIA isn't just selling chips. It's selling multiple chips. It's selling entire systems. And add on top of that software and even into a larger enterprise market, I don't think these are being factored in at this point.
And we do know a fair amount, obviously, after the earnings reports from some of those big platforms, that their CapEx budgets remain pretty high. I guess there's still going to be this reserve, though, of doubt about whether that's sustainable at a multi-year look ahead, because, there is a sense out there that there's an urgent build-out happening right now, and we're not quite sure how long it lasts.
Yeah, on a multi-year basis, you're absolutely right. There has to be downstream benefits, efficiencies and effectiveness gains that we'll see through software companies, but most importantly, software companies to enterprises. And on the consumer side, we're going to have to see uplifts, let's say, on advertising revenue, services revenue from those markers. If those don't start hitting, I think in the next 12 to 18 months, investors are going to call to have a cool off on CapEx expenditures. But I believe we are all clear for at least 12 months, maybe 18 months. That's unless, barring something economically very negative happens that's outside of NVIDIA's control.
Yeah, presumably they're not 100% immune to something like that.
Exactly.
It's interesting, this dynamic we've seen since the stock peaked in mid-June. It went lower. It had a 15-20% correction. It chopped around sideways. Same thing happened in March, actually. Had a peak there for about 2 months. It really went nowhere and sort of reloaded. I guess the question is the valuation going to get more aggressive? And I know you're going to say that PE is lower than it was a year ago. But a year ago, earnings came in twice as much as we thought they were going to be a year ago. Right. So actually, the valuation was lower last year.
Yeah, I think, again, the next 12 months, or at least for this earnings, I think we're good. I do think we are going to see that type of boost moving forward in this quarter. If nothing else, given the hyperscaler FOMO, as I call it, and we saw it from CapEx, from Meta, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. And the reason we hit these shelves and we have these sell-offs is because people have made so much money on this ticker that they are looking for any hint of a risk. A few weeks ago, it was a risk on potential Blackwell, and that's something that CEO Jensen Huang is going to have to address head on. Is Blackwell delayed? And if it is, what does that mean? Are people just going to keep buying the previous version, the H100, H200?
Yep. That's among the many things we're going to be listening for next week, Patrick, as the company does report. And as I mentioned, it's not too far off its all-time high. Patrick Moorhead, appreciate the time today.
Plus, tech is back in focus, and NVIDIA is gearing up to shake up the street with next week's biggest earnings report. What to expect from those results right after this. Tech back in focus next week with NVIDIA headlining a big slate of earnings. Salesforce, Dell, CrowdStrike set to report. For more on what we can expect, as well as the latest read on early stage companies, let's bring in Tusk Venture Partners co-founder and managing partner Bradley Tusk. Thanks for being here in person. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Gearing up for a big week next week. Yeah. A lot of people say now that we're done with Jackson Hole. Yep. We can focus on NVIDIA, and that's the next big tell for the market. What's your expectation?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's really, to me, two key issues. One would be, will they exceed earnings by even more than $1 billion or $2 billion than everyone was expected? The numbers are so big that in a way it sounds crazy, but like $1 billion or $2 billion is actually not that material. But nonetheless, I think people are looking at that. But the second really is the question of the delay that they've had on some of their chips and how material and how serious is that or not, right? If it is a delay that is, relatively minor and the factors can move through it quickly, it's not going to really impact fulfilling orders, then they should have to just keep trucking along and along and along. But, things in life always go wrong, even for NVIDIA sometimes. And so if it turns out, because we just don't know enough about it yet, that the delay is more serious than people realize, then that's certainly going to impact revenue, and that should impact the share price.
So let me ask you, first of all, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having
me. Friday. to me, it seems like it's a question of demand, not necessarily what they can fulfill, right? Even if they're delayed a little longer than expected, they haven't even commented really on if that's actually true. Let's say it is. But to me, it seems like it's a question of, is demand still beyond what they can supply, even if they're back to where they want to be production-wise for Blackwell?
You know, it's weird because it's a little conceptual in a way. So, for example, you know, I'm an early-stage tech investor, and we have seen over the last 2 years or so that even as valuations overall have fallen, AI valuations have been really, really high. But we're seeing that start to decline. So, for example, the other day, there was a company with $2 million in revenue that was looking for a $110 million valuation, which in any other form of venture investing would be crazy. And in AI, it's like, well, if you want to be an AI, that's how it goes. And I don't think they got it. And so I do think that at least on the venture side, it's starting to rationalize a little bit. And yes, this may be the most transformative technology since the wheel or the printing press or whatever you want to call it. But at the same time, there have to be commercial applications for it. And we've seen some cool stuff around generative AI like ChatGPT. But, you know, it's all still kind of like, hey, this could be amazing. This could be transformative. It's not like there's that much P&L really being driven by any of it.
All right, I hope you're all having a great weekend. I wanted to make sure that you all had access to the clips you just watched, and now I'm going to recap some of what I said in yesterday's video, in case you missed it, because not much has changed between yesterday and today. So yesterday, the S&P finished the day up just over 1%, and NVIDIA closed the day up about 4.5%. This is, of course, in light of Fed Chair Jerome Powell's speech yesterday morning at Jackson Hole, in which he made clear that interest rate cuts are on the way. Powell said that the time has come for policy to change, and then other Fed officials helped calm market participants' concerns about the cooling in the labor market. So this sent stocks higher yesterday, and especially small caps. IWM had a great run yesterday, finishing up nearly 3.2%. So we know that rate cuts are coming, and now the question is simply how much will the Fed cut in September, and how many more rate cuts could we expect later this year? And now the entire market's focus turns to NVIDIA as we prepare for earnings this coming Wednesday, August 28th. We did close yesterday, just slightly above this resistance trend line that we've been battling with recently, so that is encouraging to see. That being said, as I've mentioned in recent videos, I'm not going to put too much weight behind technical analysis between now and earnings because at this point anything could happen. NVIDIA's price action in the short term ahead of earnings really comes down to two things: what happens with the rest of the market, and whether or not we see NVIDIA investors take some risk off the table as we head into earnings. Of course, I don't know what the future holds, and I could be completely wrong. With that being said, I wouldn't be surprised if NVIDIA trades relatively flat between now and earnings, assuming that nothing unexpected happens between now and then. My reasoning for this is that I don't think many people want to bet against NVIDIA ahead of earnings, and at the same time, I don't think many people are dying to buy into NVIDIA right now before earnings, and before we get more clarity on the situation surrounding Blackwell. I think right now most market participants are cautiously awaiting NVIDIA's results this Wednesday before they make any major moves. NVIDIA's earnings will be very important not only for NVIDIA, but also for the rest of megacap tech and for the rest of the market. All of the hyperscalers indicated in their most recent earnings reports that they are increasing CapEx spending on AI by billions of dollars. With this in mind, I think it is reasonable to expect that NVIDIA will likely guide higher for future earnings. The question though is whether or not NVIDIA will exceed the street's lofty expectations. And then there is the question about a potential delay in Blackwell. If Blackwell is delayed, that does not really concern me regarding the long-term future of NVIDIA. If Blackwell is delayed, then NVIDIA can simply sell more H100 GPUs in the interim because demand is so great right now, and they would likely just guide higher for future quarters in which they expect Blackwell to ship in volume. At least that's how I view the situation. With all of that being said, I hope you're all having a great weekend, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.